With just hours to spare, lawmakers have agreed to change Iowa statutes so that about 350 former Boy Scouts who survived sexual abuse can now get more compensation.
It's part of a national settlement for years of abuse by Boy Scout leaders. Iowa State Capitol reporter Connor Hendricks shows us the late compromise.
Lawmakers had to act with urgency to get this finished. The Senate already passed it unanimously, but House lawmakers stalled and eventually changed the bill to make it clear that the statute only applies to people affected by this case and nothing else.
We can't reverse time, we can't take away the damage, but we can help with the compensation.
State Rep Ann Meyer of Fort Dodge says the bill is needed because payouts in that settlement are based on a variety of different factors,
including the type of abuse, how long it lasted, the effect it had, whether the alleged abuser had other victims, whether the victim previously knew their alleged abuser, and different states' civil statutes of limitations.
Iowa has a narrow civil statute of limitations for child sex abuse cases. That cutoff is when a person turns 19 years old. Meyer says without this legislation being signed, former Iowa Scouts could get far less than what they're entitled to.
If this is not addressed because of that statute of limitations, the value of their claim will be reduced by up to 70%.
State Rep Charlie Thompson of Charles City says without changing the language passed by the Senate, he thinks there'd be a constitutional challenge on the bill under Iowa's Equal Protection Clause.
The amendment clarifies that this is to a very special class and is of uniform application to that class. There are 6 specific findings saying that normally we wouldn't do this.
State Rep Timmy Brown Powers of Waterloo says passing the bill is the right thing to do.
These men, over 300 men, have lived with this their entire life. This is a minimal step that we can take, and I believe that this chamber can look at all these cases on an individual basis, and they deserve some peace and justice.
It took until the last day, but lawmakers hope they've passed a bill that will do just that. At the Iowa State Capitol, I'm Connor Hendricks reporting.